SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder.
Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to the House Committee on Appropriations. I am Chairman Mike Derby, State Representative, District 34. And today, as we do every day, we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Representative Norstrip, will you please start us? Thank you, Representative. I'd like to welcome all of our listeners on the internet and watching on South Dakota Public Broadcasting. And a reminder, please make sure your cell phones are off, and lobbyists must be wearing badges for the organization they're representing. All testifiers must sign the guest register, and if you need any help, the pages can certainly help you with that. All testimony and questions will be addressed through the chair. Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Zauk. Here. Casson. Here. Kolbeck. Mucky.
Here.
Moore.
Here.
Sharda.
Here.
Jorgensen.
Here.
Norstrup.
Here.
Derby.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. And are there any minutes to approve? And Who has those? Representative Sharda.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes of Monday, February 23rd, 2026.
Motion by Representative Sharda, second by Representative Mucky. Discussion on the motion.
No discussion.
All right. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And we'd like to have our page. I see one. Could you come up to the front and please introduce yourself and tell us your name, where you're from, what your future plans are, and what your favorite hobby is?
Okay. My name is Raquel Mitzel. I am from Holven. My future plan is to go to Lake Area Tech for dental assisting. And you said my favorite hobby?
Yes.
My favorite hobby is walking my dog.
Okay. Very good. Glad you're here. Thank you. Okay. Are there any introductions, personal privileges, or announcements at this time? All right. Seeing none. Okay, we are moving on to bill hearings. Senate Bill 106, modify the amount required to be set aside for extraordinary expenses incurred in providing special education programs. Good morning, Senator. Please introduce yourself.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Committee. I am Senator Stephanie Sauter from District 4 in the beautiful part of Northeast South Dakota. This morning, I would like to bring to you Senate Bill 106. As we all know, the costs associated with meeting student needs, particularly in the areas of behavioral and medical supports, continue to increase. And efforts such as Senate Bill 106 are critical to maintaining our ability to provide free and appropriate public education, or the acronym FAPE. Many schools have seen a significant increase in the number of students qualifying for individual education programs, or what we commonly hear as IEPs, which has required them to hire additional special education staff. The Extraordinary Cost Fund is intended to support public school districts facing these high special education costs so they can continue to educate all students effectively. Senate Bill 106 helps ensure that the fund fulfills that purpose by raising the appropriation by $1 million and then setting future increases to the CPI. If you would look, I did have the pages handout, some information. This little half sheet here that shows the last since school year 2016 to 2017. This program was started back in 2014. You can see the number of requests, the appropriations given, and funds requested and those expended. Some of them were met. Some of the years were met, some of them were not. If you notice that school year 2020 to 2023, the appropriation was over $5 million, but that was with COVID money, and that's how we supplied that those schools with that. And so that was a very well good for us then, but that money has since been used. If you notice this last year, the appropriation, again, was a little over $4 million. The reason there's a little extra because they keep 10% from each year as kind of like seed money in case the next year there's an exorbitant request. The funds we were requested were almost $1 million more, and so we could not give out the requests that were asked for. If you also notice that even though the number of requests go up and down, it's not from every school. The schools can vary from year to year depending on their needs. You have children and students graduate out of the program, they move, and so that can be adjusted from year to year. And also please remember that we are required to educate children on IEPs and special education until they're 21.
Senator,
Yes.
Could you define IEP for our listening audience?
Sure.
What that
An
acronym
IEP is an individual education program, and so a student who has been tested and is found to have special education needs. They are put on these individual programs to help their specific issues, whether they be reading problems or behavioral problems or math problems or whatever that is. And so their education is kind of tailored through the special education program to their special needs. So they get the best education possible through that school district. And so, and on the other sheet as well, I handed out the applications that came this last year, the school year 2025. And again, we had the requested amount was more than the appropriated amount, and so we had to prorate those requests. There was only one school that got what they asked for, and that was a very low number. On that, there's a criteria that they must go through that is posted on the website. The schools, when the schools apply for this, they know what they have to provide, and we have proponents that can give you more information about that because they work with it every day, every year. And so, having said that, I would like to put, bring my presentation to a pause here and yield my time to the other proponents so they may speak to it because they do know what we're going through. I stand by for questions, and I appreciate your favorable consideration on this.
Thank you, Senator. Additional proponents for Senate Bill 106. Additional proponents. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the House Appropriations Committee. I'm Diana Miller, registered lobbyist for the Large School Group. And I bring to you Senate Bill 106 with a couple suggestions today, but I want to talk. I think Senator Sauter did an excellent job on explaining the process for utilization of the Extraordinary Cost Fund. I would just tell you folks that the Extraordinary Cost Fund is an integral part of our special education program and our funding, not only for the state, but for the kids with special needs. And since 2014, you can see from the chart that was distributed to you, the amount of money that has been requested. It's basically been at $4 million, except during the COVID years. And the amount of need by school district continues to go up, and more students are qualifying for special ed and their IEPs. They're very difficult services to give to students, and some are very high risk. The fact of the matter is, I think we have to, when you look at the COVID years, I would disregard those because obviously we had COVID money and we used that, and so the amount of requests were less or fewer. The fact of the matter is, I know there's been concern because we're asking for two parts of this bill. We're asking for an additional $1 million, so that would go to $5 million, and we're asking to index it. I understand that's difficult, and from watching and talking with many of your peers here, I know that they don't want to necessarily give us both. I'm trying to build into this program some stability, and I know you want to have years of data so you can look at, because you like data up here, and you like to verify it. But I think that, first of all, you also always ask for accountability. There are strict accountability procedures in place in that if you use the Extraordinary Cost Fund, there are two levies in special education, a qualifying of about 1%, and then there's the 1.574 per 1,000 of taxable valuation. That's the high one. And in order to be a participant and get authority to use this fund, the schools that apply must be at that higher levy. Now, some schools, I will admit, and I don't have the number, but some schools don't even levy for special education. And therefore, some schools open enroll to the schools that have special education services, and we understand that. Parents want their children to have the best possible services they can get. So they may choose the open enrollment option, which we have and we support in this state. Last year, when you looked at the 20 schools that had to be prorated down from what they requested because we didn't have enough money, That's concerning to us because in some cases, one student could move into a school district and be very high cost and take all their special education money. And we have a couple schools that have very high cost students and they've had to be shipped out of state. Why? Because, or we had to at least try to ship them out of state because the programs existed out of state and not in state. You have a board that protects this, and you have the members of that board. I will talk about, there's one member from DOE, there's one member from schools 600 and greater, there's one member from schools 200 to 600, there's one member from 200 to less, and there's one legislator that serves on that committee. That board is appointed and has done an excellent job, as difficult as it is, because it's difficult to tell schools when they apply, I'm sorry, but you don't qualify. The next accountability is they have to be high-risk students. They need specialized programs. So you have the checks and balances that you like. You have the data that shows how many were prorated. Now I'm going to do something unusual because I know, and I've been talking to all of you, there's some consternation about giving both. If you give us 1 million, you would prefer not to do the indexing. If you give us indexing, you'd prefer not to give us the 1 million. That's a dilemma, and I'm not telling you what to do. You'll have to make that decision. I'm giving you an off-ramp on this. If you give us the 1 million and you delay till 2028, the index factor, as you have done in the past, because some people say you can't promise one legislative body to another. You've done that with sales tax. You promised them 4.2, and it would stay in place with a sunset until, and then it would go to 4.5 in 2027. So it's not unheard of that we try to delay. That way it would answer the question for you, how do you know that schools, we're gonna have to prorate schools this year when they come to the fund? There's your answer. You would know, and you'd have 2 years of data. I think that would give you a good indication of how many schools and what type of schools are going to apply to this fund. Now, the reason I'm giving you this runway or this new path, so to speak, is because I represent large schools, and I'm hearing from my organization, many of the large schools, and I don't know how many, I can't give you a number, because we haven't evaluated where special ed is this coming year. But they will be applying. They tell me indications are that they will be coming to the Extraordinary Cost Fund because they have students of those high-risk need. The other thing I would say is that when you look at these schools and this board and what they're going to have to rule on, it gives you some level of security, and it gives you some leeway to look at, because I understand data is important. The other thing I would ask that you look at with this is you're helping a very important part of school. And lastly, I would say, and you know I'm going to say this, we don't know where we are yet, and I don't think you do yet, on two things. You don't know where you are on the state aid to education. I know what I've heard. 1%, I've heard 1.25. I haven't heard a definite number. I operate in reality. And if we're down at 1% or 1.25, that means we're going to have to look to our general fund to supplement special education if we don't have enough money. The second thing I know you don't know yet is where you are, and I'll be very blunt. I'm not normally that way, you know that. I'm pretty reserved, but you don't know where your reserve is yet, how much money you're going to put into reserve. So I'm a realist, and I know a lot of negotiations are going to happen here, Chairman Derby and Vice Chair Novstrop, but I'm trying to give options. I like to solve problems, and please give me some hope yet, because I got a lot of things hanging out here. So, Mr. Chairman, I would be happy to stand by for questions, and I would respectfully ask you decide one way or another on Senate Bill 106 and provide me some breathing room to help kids with special needs. And I know you care about those kids, and I know you have difficult decisions, but I'm here asking to please consider this as a high priority. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Additional proponents for Senate Bill 106. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Good
Rob
morning.
Munson, Executive Director, School Administrators of South Dakota. I certainly appreciate Senator Sauter bringing this bill in front of you today, and you can certainly tell she is an educator. She is calm, she's assertive, and at the end of her presentation, she made you feel like, you know, $1 million probably isn't enough. Let's go to 2. That's just the feeling you get from her. This bill did not just show up on the first day of legislative session, I will tell you that. There was a work group over starting last spring through the summer into the fall of legislators, school superintendents, principals, and lobbyists. And we had an entire list of bills and priorities we were looking at. This bill is the only one this one bubbled to the top, certainly, and this is the only bill left that was brought to the legislators on level of importance. This bill is extremely important to schools, and we see not a lot of one-time money being handed out to the schools this legislative session. So we would certainly like to keep this bill alive, and I think the opportunities that Ms. Miller presented are palatable and something we could certainly work with and support. So we would please ask that you keep this bill moving. Thank you. Thank you. Additional proponents. Additional proponents. Good morning.
Good morning. I'll be quick because I came in late. Mitch Richter, South Dakota United School Association, and we'll just be a me too. I know that Mr. Colbeck will be happy about that. Thank you.
Additional proponents, are there any online? Yes, we do have some proponents online. Okay, we'll start with Ms. Smith. And we can't hear you, Ms. Smith.
One more time.
Nope, we still cannot hear you, Ms. Smith. Should we move on and come back to you? Okay.
That's Kathy.
Ms. Kaufman, would you like to go? Thank you.
Chairman and committee members, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
All right, just to provide some clarification on some of the comments that have already been made. I'm Kathy Kaufman. I represent the McCook Central School District in Salem, South Dakota. I have been a business manager for 27 years and have served in 3 separate South Dakota schools. In each one of those schools, we have applied to the Extraordinary Cost Fund to help cover our special education costs. I was advised to keep this brief. I know at this point in the session, you guys have heard a lot of testimony. So I'm going to do my best in a short amount of time to help you understand special education funding. For a school district, as it was mentioned, the levy is set by the legislature. And so I will tax at the maximum levy. However, it's also based on my property tax valuations. I can give you an example that I had less revenue in fiscal year 24 than I had in fiscal year 23 because of where the levy was set and then where my valuations ended up. There's also a few other caveats that when there's a high cost student application, there's a high cost program application, and then there's a supplemental application. I do not like attaching a so-called dollar amount to a student. However, if I'm not doing that, I'm not doing my job as a school business manager. As an example, in tracking costs over the years, we can have a student that has high cost needs, requires an out-of-district placement with specialized transportation, and then receives services at their day program that could cost a school district $270,000 in one fiscal year. Elaborating also on some other comments that have been made, each district is unique and each student is unique. So depending on how much a district can levy in local tax dollars will determine based on whether or not they need to apply to the Extraordinary Cost Fund. We have school districts in the state that are levying taxes with not a high number of costs in special education. Therefore, they don't apply to the extraordinary cost fund. But then you have districts, and primarily a lot of districts that are closer to your avenues that offer those out of district placement costs are going to have high student costs. You're going to run into districts that will have high program costs if they're not close enough to facilities to be able to place those kiddos in day programs and transport them. Another caveat that I will put out there is in applying to extraordinary cost fund, as it was noted, we've got to tax at the maximum for our special education levy. And another caveat that will keep schools from just applying just to make sure that they have funds is we cannot apply if our special education fund balance is higher than 10%. So there are caveats that keep those applications to where schools aren't just applying to apply for the money. As it was mentioned, we provide services to students until June of any fiscal year after they've turned 21. And last year was the first year that the allocation did not fund all of the requests. So what the committee did was they funded the high cost students at full amounts and then funded the high cost program requests at 90%. I thank you for your time, and I will be around for additional questions.
Thank you very much. Ms. Smith, you try it again here?
Let's try again.
Yep.
Chair and members of the committee, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. My name is Shannon Smith, and I am the Director of Special Services for the Brookings School District. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of Senate Bill 106. Behind every number we discussed today is a child who may not be able to communicate without specialized speech services, a child who requires daily physical support just to access the classroom, a child whose behavioral or medical needs demand highly trained professionals and carefully designed programming. In Brookings, we serve approximately 700 students through special services. This year, 696 students qualified for special education on our December 1 child count. That's nearly 20% of our total student enrollment. We've had an increase of approximately 20 students from that December 1 child count to now. Those additional students are not reflected in the funding formula, yet their needs are immediate. We do not have the option to delay services. We do not have the option to say next year. When extraordinary cost funding falls short, districts must absorb those costs locally. That decision was not about expanding programs. It's about ensuring a child receives services they're legally entitled to and morally deserving of. In our projected 25-26 budget discussions, our district applied for $1,030,000 in extraordinary cost state funds. The state allocated roughly $980,000 to our district, leaving a funding gap of about $50,000 that the district had to use general fund transfer to cover the shortfall. The demand for services exceeds our and many other districts' available funding. For example, the average cost of a student to be placed in a district and out of district placement for services for a school year can range from $120,000 to $150,000. We've had to use an out of state placement for a student because there was no available in-state placement, and that cost just for tuition was over $500,000 for the year. The therapy services provided are billed separately and are in addition to the tuition rate. This includes speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, depending on what the student qualifies for, and is included in the IEP for related services. Students who require nursing services can have an estimated cost of $10,000 a month. The cost of transportation for the student to and from that placement is also incurred by the district, as well as paying for mileage to families to visit or attend appointments with their child. Every time we backfill from the general fund, it creates ripple effects. It impacts long-term planning. It pressures other programs, and it reduces flexibility. And in smaller or rural districts, those pressures can be even more significant. Senate Bill 106 is not about adding something new, it's about honoring a promise. The promise that South Dakota will stand behind its highest need students and the districts that serve them. These are our most vulnerable learners. They require intensive supports, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech services, psychological services, behavior interventions, not because it's optional, but because it's essential for their growth, dignity, and future independence. When we strengthen the extraordinary cost fund, we're not just stabilizing budgets, we're protecting access. We're ensuring that a child's disability does not determine the quality of their education. We are affirming that in South Dakota, every student matters. I respectfully ask for your support of Senate Bill 106 for fiscal stability, for equity, and most importantly, for the children whose needs are the greatest. Our highest need students do not get to choose their challenges, but we can choose how we support them. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I'll stand by for questions.
Thank you. Just a quick clarifier, Ms. Smith. You're from where? Watertown, did I hear?
Brookings.
Brookings, very good. Okay, it looks like we have one more testifier online. Please introduce yourself.
Mr. Chairman and committee members, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning. My name is Paul Coleman, and I am the physics chemistry teacher, superintendent, and special education director at Avon School District 4-1. And I would like to thank you for the opportunity to testify in favor of SB 106 this morning. I would like to thank the legislature for its foresight in 1995 in establishing the Extraordinary Cost Fund as part of the state aid formula for special education. Without the support of the Extraordinary Cost Fund, the Avon School District would have been forced to pursue a tax opt-out many years ago to meet its mandated obligations. In this bill, we talk a lot about money, but I want to spend a minute on the impact these students have on our general education students. The integration of special education students within the general education setting is a positive and important aspect of public education. It promotes acceptance, mutual respect, and a strong sense of community for all learners. This year, our school experienced the unexpected loss of one of our cherished special pirate students. The response from the Avon student body was deeply compassionate and unified, demonstrating the strong connections that had been formed. This moment served as a powerful reminder that life is precious and sometimes far too brief, reinforcing the value of kindness, empathy, and community within our school. However, it is an unfortunate reality that educating many special education students often requires resources that exceed the typical budgetary capacity of a public school district. As previously noted, the education of these students is mandated under the Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. Accordingly, public schools are legally obligated to provide all services outlined in a student's individualized education program, regardless of the level of local funding available to the district. For these reasons, I would first like to sincerely thank you for your continued support of the Extraordinary Cost Fund. I would respectfully urge your support of SB 106, which would allow this funding to continue and more fully address the total cost of approved requests. There is no doubt in my mind that without an increase in funding, districts such as ours will be forced to pursue additional tax opt-outs to meet these federally mandated obligations. Thank you for this opportunity to testify, and I will stand by for any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there additional proponents? Any additional proponents, either online or in the room? Any additional proponents? Yes. Good morning, Representative.
Good morning. Roger DeGroot, District 7, Brookings. I know you've heard this 100 times before, but I truly didn't intend to talk here this morning. I actually just about missed the meeting, but I just want to, I can't add to what the folks online said. They really went in deep into it. I just want to look at it more of a global picture. I put together a big committee of educators this summer, and I just want to say that number one issue in education is funding. Number two was student behavior, and this was number three. And they have no control over this. That's the issue. They have, and you've heard that from them. They have no control. They have to fund this, and if they don't get the money from the extraordinary cost, it comes right straight out of the general fund budget. And as the last gentleman from Avon stated, they just don't have the money to do that, so that's going to have to come from an opt-out, and we've dealt with several opt-outs. But anyway, I'll stand by for questions, and I urge you to support Senate Bill 106.
Thank you, Representative. Any further proponents? Seeing none, we'll move to opponents. Opponents. Senate Bill 106. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Grant Judson with the Bureau of Finance and Management. Senate Bill 106 would increase the annual set-aside for the Extraordinary Cost Fund from $4 to $5 million annually. While we appreciate the importance of supporting students that need the additional support, the data does not indicate increasing the amount for extraordinary costs is the right option. The Extraordinary Cost Fund exists specifically to assist school districts with truly extraordinary special education expenses. Districts may apply under 3 categories: high-cost student, high-cost program, and supplemental aid. Since fiscal year 2014, the legislature has set aside $4 million annually for this purpose, with unexpected funds carrying forward up to a maximum of $5.5 million with the appropriation plus the carryover. Over the past 5 years, requests have not exceeded available funding. In most years, the fund has not only been sufficient, but has reached and maintained the statutory $5.5 million maximum with the appropriation plus the carryover. In other words, the fund has generally operated with adequate capacity to meet district needs. Even in the most recent year, when requests exceeded available funds, the Extraordinary Cost Fund Board applied structured and equitable adjustments. Supplemental aid requests were fully funded. Remaining requests were adjusted to ensure districts did not exceed a 7% projected ending fund balance. High-cost student requests were funded at 95%, and high-cost program requests were funded at 90%, with further adjustments based on prior year fund balances. This demonstrates that the existing structure is functioning as intended, prioritizing need, maintaining fiscal safeguards, and ensuring responsible distribution of limited dollars. It is also important to remember that the Extraordinary Cost Fund is only one component of special education funding. Every 2 years, each disability level is rebased based on the previous 3 years' actual expenditures. This ensures that the per-student allocation reflect real costs. When costs rise system-wide, the formula adjusts accordingly. That mechanism is designed to address broader funding pressures, while the Extraordinary Cost Fund addresses districts with extraordinary needs not addressed through the formula. Increasing the extraordinary cost set aside to $5 million would require an additional $603,143 in ongoing general funds and $396,858 in additional property taxes. Under the governor's recommended budget, this would increase the special education levies from 1.229 to 1.234 across all property classes. Since 2020, on average, only about 18 school districts submit applications to the Extraordinary Cost Fund each year. However, the levy would increase to every taxpayer in every school district across the state, not just those accessing the fund. This shifts costs broadly for a program that historically has had sufficient capacity and built-in flexibility through the carryover. Additionally, indexing the higher set-aside would create ongoing general fund and property tax obligations in future years, compounding the fiscal impact. The Extraordinary Cost Fund was designed as a targeted backstop for addressing students' needs outside of the formula, not as an expanded funding stream. The data shows that it has largely met its purpose under the current structure, and the broader special education formula already adjusts to reflect actual costs. For these reasons, we respectfully ask that you oppose Senate Bill 106.
Thank you. Additional opponents? Any additional opponents online? Seeing none, rebuttal by the sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Stephanie Sauter, Senator from District 4. And just a couple comments. I want to thank the proponents that came on today to support this bill. Believe me, the schools are doing what they can up until this point. This is not their first place to come to for additional funding. They're doing what they can. You have to understand too that it was mentioned that sometimes there's a student that comes in to the district after funding has been supplied to them, and the schools are responsible for that. And what do you do about that? It's not just pass the cup or have a bake sale to provide funding for this child. So a lot of times it often happens that it's out of the school's control. Again, it is federally mandated, so we have to follow that. Understand these are children who have severe physical, learning, and behavioral disabilities. These aren't for the kids who just can't quite catch on to math. Those are taken care of. These are the kids and the students that are above and beyond what we can do within the school, or they have to have that special attention in the school. We possibly have to hire another paraprofessional or another teacher. We're looking at $50,000 to $60,000 in additional employee. Some of these have to be taken to another location within the state. I know some schools drive their children, their special needs students, 100 miles one way for the day, and then they bring them back to the school. They do that 5 days a week. That costs money if you're just looking just at the gas alone. And that's not for the to pay for the services in Sioux Falls or Rapid City or wherever they have to take them. And again, it was also mentioned that some of these students cannot be helped within our state. They have to be placed outside our schools. To no fault of their own, no fault of the schools. There just isn't a place for them to come to stay in South Dakota, which we would prefer that happening, being closer to their families. And so there are measures that are out of our control, and that's what they're coming to the special fund for. It was mentioned that the funds are not fully used every year or per every request cycle. That's because whoever back when they set this up, it was the consensus of the group that approximately 10% be kept back, so they don't spend it down to $0 every year. They don't do that because it was set up, and you can check on that on the website. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact page of the handout on that. But that was determined when this was all set up, that they would keep money, call it seed money if you went for the next year, in case there was a greater increase of requests. So that's why it's not spent down to $0. Maybe that can be changed. Maybe we want to spend, all the money in the fund and start at $0 every year. That's a possibility. That's not what this bill addresses. That could be something possible in the future, but right now that's not what this bill addresses. So Senate Bill 106 increases the extraordinary cost fund set aside from $4 million to $5 million beginning July 1st of 2026, and then beginning July 1st, 2027, indexes that amount so it grows with costs. That is the bill in its current form. This change ensures the fund remains responsive and sustainable over time. Without this adjustment, districts could be forced to absorb special education costs through their general funds, potentially leading to reductions in educational programming or increased reliance on opt-outs and other local property taxes, both of which concern school boards and communities across our state. Without ECF funding in the spring, rural districts especially face significant financial challenges in meeting these obligations. Senate Bill 106 is a meaningful step in the right direction to providing much needed support and to stop the volatility so we can continue meeting the needs of all students. Thank you for recognizing the challenges faced by our small rural schools and potentially our larger ones as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. We'll open up for committee questions at this time. Committee questions, Representative Muckey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This may be for the prime, it might also be in this case for Ms. Miller. When we're talking about this process and we're talking about an index factor in here, I don't know if I have the correct language for this, but I know there's conversation about rebase. Can you explain more about that?
Good morning.
Good morning. Diana Miller, registered lobbyist for the large school group, and thank you for the question. A few years ago, when we looked at special education costs and that, they were constantly increasing. At one point, when we passed the first law on rebasing is looking at across the state what are the costs of various programs in the 7 categories of disabilities. And consequently, you look at that, and then we changed the law from 3 years to every 2 years to be more current. And so now we rebase and we look at averaging as to what the costs of programs would be. Now, that doesn't take into effect what if we have out of state. I mean, every state will be different on what they charge for their programs, and then we have to try to meet that. So that's what rebasing is, and we did it last year, and so next year we will be rebasing again.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that. One thing I want to make sure I understand too, and for the committee's awareness, as the rebase goes, how does that impact this fund in any way? Just making sure I understand.
Thank you for the question. Diana Miller, registered lobbyist for the large school group, Mr. Chairman. It could, potentially, because if the categories go up in costs as to what we have to pay for a special needs student, then we've got to look at what are we levying for special ed and where is our fund in the local school district. If it's depleted, then we've got to go somewhere. And we're going to go one of two places. We're going to go to our general fund, and you know my standard argument on that. I don't even know where we are on that anymore. Right now, today. So we would go borrow money and you could transfer from your general fund to special ed, or we're going to go to an opt-out. I mean, and we certainly have talked about opt-outs enough here that I don't think that's the first option we're going to take. We can't just and obviously I would love for the federal government to fund special education at the amount which would be appropriate to help states, but I can't count on that either right now. I'm looking at the people I can count on. That's what I'm looking at right now. So I'm here, that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll do my best to be counted upon. Last question, I can say. So I'm trying to get my arms around this too, and I can kind of get some rough math out of this from the handouts that have been given to us. So I appreciate your language about reversions in this bill, taking that language out or adjusting that. How much do you suspect on an annual basis we may be able to keep in the fund with that change?
Mr. Chairman, that is just a shot in the dark for me right now. I'm not even in target practice. I have not discussed with the large school group how many of you are looking. I do know one thing. My larger schools will levy at the maximum amount to generate as much as they can in special ed. Then the question comes, how many students do they have to fund, what programs? Then they have to anticipate if somebody open enrolls and comes in. It's all an estimation game. We're used to doing this, obviously. But I can tell you, at least from discussions individually, I have not surveyed my group, but I know that there are at least 3 others in addition to who's on here. Brookings is on here, Mitchell's on here. I don't know where they stand, Del Rapids. I know at least 3 more, maybe 4, that will be at the Extraordinary Cost Fund next year and asking this board to help fund. And I don't want to get in a competition with large school, small school. That is not where I want to be. It's just an impossible situation for us when we do that. So thank you for the questions.
Additional questions. Representative Casson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Diana, as we look at this in this little sheet that we got here.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Forgive me, I'm trying to follow it. We're talking about leaving 10% each year. So when we start with school year 2016-2017, we appropriated $4.94 million. Is that because we had carryover from the year before?
Mr. Chairman, I'll try to answer that, but I do have Secretary Graves could answer that probably better than I can.
Yeah,
I would
whoever's better to answer.
I would assume that's probably what, and I would not want to take responsibility for answering that question.
Okay. So I do have more questions on this sheet.
Okay. Good morning. Please identify yourself.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Joe Graves, Secretary of Education, and you are correct in that if there's an additional money in there, it was reserved from the previous year, so held over, and we're able to hold over so many dollars per year, and so that's why that was there.
Thank you. Follow up? Okay, so as we work down this, the sheet from 16, 17, 17, 18, there's an increase in 2020 to 2021 due to COVID, so we received additional funding to get to 5.5 million. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair?
I'm sorry if you want the sheet.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then, follow up, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And then as we work down that, so in 2020 and 2021, there was less money requested, less funds expended. I'm assuming the law then says that you couldn't use that money to read, because you were at 5.5, we're at 5.5 million for three straight years. Is that
Mr.
correct?
Chair? Yes, that's the cap on the amount of money that can be held in that account.
Okay, so as we move down, you're kind of backing down from 5.5, and we just continue to back down. Is that, I mean, it's
Mr. Chair.
It's really difficult to.
Yes, that's correct.
One follow-up.
Yes.
And the other question I have, and I don't know who's best to answer this. If we raise the base, can it ever go back down?
Mr. Chair, by the base, do you mean there's an allocation currently of 4 million, you wanted to move it to 5? It would basically require a different bill, a future bill to reduce the base back down. If you bring it up to 5, then it's going to stay at 5 until the statute changes, unless you index it.
Follow up?
Please.
So if we index it, then we cannot bring it back down.
Mr. Chair? Well, again, if you pass a new bill and you change, if you say, all right, we're going to go to 5 million, and then we're going to index it 2 years from now, and then the next year you pass a bill that says we're no longer going to get an index. I mean, you can always change the law.
I see a gentleman from BFM would like to chime in.
Mr. Chair, Grant Judson from the Bureau of Finance and Management. So when you increase this set aside annually from $4 to $5 million, because it's a part of the special education appropriation, you would actually be increasing the maintenance of effort required by us to receive federal funding. So while you could change the law back down to 4 million or take out the index factor, we would still be required to maintain that level of appropriation. So we can't reduce, if we reduce what is appropriated, we would be in violation of the maintenance of effort and, receive penalties from federal dollars.
Follow up? Representative Mucky, and then was there one over here, question over here? No. Representative Mucky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Following to that, what is our maintenance of effort level that we're required by law to maintain?
Mr. Chair, I don't have the exact figure in front of me right now. I believe it is in the range of $103 million in FY 2026. So until we, depending on what is passed in the General Appropriations Act, that would increase.
Follow up. Yes. So when you're talking about the 103 million, are you talking about the entirety of our special education funding in this case?
Mr. Chair, that would be the state portion of special education funding.
Okay. So I guess follow up, Mr. Chair, just making sure I'm gathering this process. So what you're saying is we don't want to mess with, or if this is passed, we increase this, we're obviously attaching that to our 103 million. If the other portion of our special education funding ever comes down, then you're concerned that we may miss our MOE. Is that my understanding?
Mr. Chair, yeah, as you increase this amount, this would obviously increase our MOE. So depending on where, rebases come in the future or inflationary increases, that could affect the MOE and bring it down. But like I said, if we don't meet our MOE, we will be violating, we will not receive as much in federal funds.
I think I understand. Thank you.
Okay, we're running up against time schedule here, but time for one more question, and then
Chair, this is Kathy. This is Kathy Kaufman. I'm online.
Yes.
Could I add some rebuttal?
We are in questions at this
Okay.
point in time, so we'll continue with committee questions. Representative Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a question. I believe Dr. Graves maybe can answer this. I've got two questions. This is the first one.
Mr. Chair, we'll see.
Okay, Dr. Graves, a student that comes underneath this program, there's also a state aid formula, and I don't know, it's probably different for each school if the amount of money is 5,000, 6,000, 7,000, whatever it might be, under the student formula for each student registered at one of the schools. Is that money included in on the total cost of the education that you have to provide under federal law for this particular student? And you can pick any school you want, but I'm just saying, is that state aid formula also figured into this amount of money, or is it not? Because the school gets the money if the student is registered in that particular district, correct?
Mr. Chair, so we're not talking anymore about ECF. We're talking about the money that's allocated for a student who's on an IEP. Is that what the question is? Yes. So the allocation is made based upon the fact of both the fact that they're on an IEP and their disability level, as there are 6 different disability levels, and the higher the level, the more funding given, provided behind that student. Now, there's no requirement that the exact amount of dollars is provided based upon the formula is provided for an individual student, but the money is provided on that basis.
Okay, thank you. I've been in appropriations a lot, and we run into these kind of special funds, from the hearing impaired fund, et cetera, on down the line that are funded yearly on certain, dollar amounts that we appropriate for. And if I get it correctly, the most that can ever be in this fund is $5.5 million, if I get that correct. I mean, that's what was brought to our attention.
Mr. Chair, that's
yeah,
correct.
That is correct. Okay. Over the years that you've got listed here on this here sheet, from 2016 on down to 2025, if there is, and I looked at the numbers, what happens with the money that was not spent? And then, because I know this last year you had a couple of schools that had some extraordinary expenses underneath this here particular appropriation. So what happens with that extra money? You cannot go above the 5.5 million, or if there's 2 million left over, like in 21, 22, 23, what happens with that extra money? Does it stay in that fund, or is it reverted back to a different fund, or is the fund swept? I don't know. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, my understanding, and I would accept correction from BFM as appropriate, but my understanding is, so the $4 million is allocated, and you may have as much as $1.5 million left over from the previous year. If that gives you $5.5 million and you don't spend it all, you can continue $1.5 million in the account for the next year. If you have more than that, because nobody was requesting it, then my understanding is the money would revert.
Thank you, but could I have the BFM guy just, Grant, could you verify that?
Mr. Chair, Grant Judson with the Bureau of Finance and Management. So yeah, if say you spent only $2.5 million out of the fund, well, next year you obviously appropriated annually $4 million. You could carry over that 1.5 for a total of $5.5 million. Now, I think in the years you're talking about where we had $5.5 million in the fund and we only spent around $2.5 million, well, we can't carry over more than the 5.5, and we can't keep carrying over those funds again. So, those funds would eventually revert back to the state.
further questions? I have a question for Ms. Kaufman. Ms. Kaufman, do you have any new information that you'd like to provide?
What I would like to expound on, Kathy Kaufman, Business Manager for the McCook Central School District, Mr. Chair, is on some of the clarification on some of the questions is when they're talking about the levels of disability, the highest level of disability, the allocation in a state aid, the need calculated for a school district, that disability level is $37,039. So as an example, when I'm completing the extraordinary cost fund application and I'm applying for a high cost student, I can't apply until I have spent over double that $37,039. And I have specifically one student in my district that the total cost that we have spent in a year is $270,000. And that allocation is only $37,000 that's allocated in that state aid formula. I'll give another example when we're talking about a district doesn't know what they're going to request. That is very accurate. We don't know. I had a kiddo move in last March that wasn't on my December 1 child count that I won't receive any funding for 18 months. That student's cost for on an annual basis is $130,000. So I applied for $140,000 last fiscal year. This next fiscal year, I'm looking at applying for over $400,000. I would like to comment on if with the increase in levy, that a school district that doesn't have special education costs that warrant levying those monies, the district's not going to levy. So when you look at levying across the state, the business managers are looking at what their special education costs are, and they're not going to levy the taxpayers if the need isn't warranted. Lastly, when we're talking maintenance of effort, so each school district has to maintain our maintenance of effort also. So what that's referring to is the amount of special education expenses that I expended last fiscal year. I have to expend at least that much, if not more, to meet maintenance of effort. However, I know that when those kiddos, when we're talking about, we're supplying services until June after the year that they turn 21. If I have a kiddo that is one of those high cost kiddos and then they age out of the system, then I can spend less the next year based on maintenance of effort. It's not warranted anymore. As long as you have, so I just want, when we're talking about meeting maintenance of effort, there are exceptions to the maintenance of effort if we have kiddos that age out of the system.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions from the committee? We are seeing none. We are going to defer action on this until tomorrow. It's our last bill hearing day, but we are going to defer Senate Bill 106 until tomorrow. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to Senate Bill 74, transfer monies to the general fund from the Budget Reserve Fund and the General Replacement Fund and to declare an emergency.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Casson.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have an amendment I'd like to move.
We have a motion to move an amendment. Is there a second? Second. Second by Representative Out. Representative, all in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
Did you want me to explain what the amendment was, Mr. Chair?
Yes, would you please?
Okay, I didn't. So Amendment 74A basically takes what's the current dollar figures in there, it takes them and moves them to $101 as we work through the one-time budget, and the things that we're working through with regards to the roadmap, and as we say, landing the plane, we need these numbers. These numbers may vary, so what this allows us to do is to get exact numbers at the end of the process and insert them in the bill in a conference committee.
Very good. Any further discussion? Comments? We've moved the amendment already, and so we have adopted the amendment. Is there any further discussion on Senate Bill 74 as amended?
Mr. Chair, Brandy Meisner, Bureau of Finance and Management. The representative stole my thunder a bit. Would just ask that you support Senate Bill 74. It just allows us to keep these kind of one-time budget items, discussions going. It gives you the vehicle to continue those. So I would ask that you support.
Thank you. Representative Auk.
May I make a motion? I make a motion to pass.
Motion by Representative Auk, second by Representative Casson, do pass on Senate Bill 74 as amended. Discussion on the motion.
I think we need to keep this bill moving, just like she said. Let's pass it.
Okay. All right. At this time, we'll have the secretary call the roll.
Representative Zauk?
Aye.
Casson? Colbeck?
Aye.
Mucky?
Aye.
Moore?
Aye.
Sharda?
Aye.
Jorgensen?
Aye.
Norstrup?
Aye.
Derby?
Aye.
9 yeas, excuse me.
Okay. Motion do pass for Senate Bill 74 as amended hereby passes. Okay, is there anything else for the good of the cause? Okay, entertaining motion. Representative Auk, second by Representative Colbeck. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.
SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota legislature and in-depth reporting from peer. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB celebrates South Dakota's student athletes with live coverage of SDHSAA state championships, sharing the excitement of hometown heroes. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. From choir to debate to theater, SDPB shines a spotlight on South Dakota's talented students through SDHSAA All-State Fine Arts Programming. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From children's programs to in-depth documentaries, SDPB sparks curiosity and lifelong learning in every South Dakotan. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB brings South Dakotans together, telling the stories that unite small towns, big ideas, and the people who make our state shine. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB shares the voices and experiences of South Dakotans, preserving our stories, our culture, and our sense of place. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. As South Dakota's public media network, SDPB serves everyone with transparency, integrity, and commitment to open access. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB helps shape South Dakota's future by educating, informing, and inspiring the next generation of thinkers, leaders, and creators. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder.
Good morning. Welcome to the Joint Committee on Appropriations. I'm Representative Mike Derby. I'm the lead co-chair this year, along with my co-chair, Senator Otten. And just a minute here. Over. Okay, at this time, as we do for every meeting, we'll start out with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Representative Auk, will you please lead us? Thank you, Representative. And like to welcome our listeners and those watching on South Dakota Public Broadcasting. A reminder, please make sure your cell phones are off. Lobbyists must be wearing badges for the organization they're representing, and testifiers must sign the guest register. If you have any questions on how to do that, we have pages over here in the corner. And all testimony and questions will be addressed through the chair. This time, I'd like to ask Secretary to please call the roll.
Senators and Representatives, Ms. Gimmons.
Here.
Auk. Here. Casson. Here. Moore. Here. Billhauer. Here. Carly.
Here.
Boyda. Here. Jorgensen.
Here.
Howard. Here. Foster. Sharda.
Here.
Mucky. Here. Zickmund.
Here.
Norstrup.
Here.
Sorry, I missed Colbeck.
You missed me, but I'm here.
Yep. Norstrup.
Here.
Lafke.
Here.
Otten.
Here.
And Derby.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, are there any minutes for approval?
Mr. President,
Oh, Senator Zickman.
I move to approve the minutes of Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026.
I have a motion by Senator Zickman, second by Representative Mucky. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And could we have the pages come up front, please? Please introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and future plans and your favorite hobby.
Good morning. I'm Ryler Stivics. I'm a senior at Gregory High School. Next year, I plan to attend Mitchell Tech for construction and architect. One of my favorite hobbies is volunteering in my local community.
Good morning. My name is Cooper Falkenhagen. I attend Sally Beats High School in Oneida. I plan to attend Mitchell Tech to become an electrician and play football at DWU. And one of my favorite hobbies is probably helping my dad around working.
Mr. Chairman.
That's a great hobby. Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, Representative Norstrup.
Question for the page. You're going to the tech school, but you're going to play football for DW. Is that possible?
Yes, they have a partnership together that allows you to play football and go to a different college together.
Thank you.
Okay, Senator Miskimmons.
He'll be playing with my grandson, who also is a member of that program. He's getting his business degree. He takes ag business at Mitchell Tech, and he'll get his business degree at Dakota Wesleyan. But he'll be on the football team with my grandson.
Cool. Are there any introductions, personal privileges, or announcements? Senator Miskimmons.
Since we're talking Mitchell, I want to give a shout out to the Dakota Wesleyan women's basketball team that won the GPAC championship last night. They beat number 1 Dort in Iowa. So it was a big win for the school and the community.
Fantastic. Well, at this time, I'd like to take a personal privilege. We have a couple of very important folks here in the room. Allie Hermson, my intern, is being represented today by her grandparents. Would you please come up and introduce yourselves? Good morning. Good morning. Welcome, and please tell us where you're from and your future plans and your favorite hobby.
All right, Mike and Janice Bohr, and Allie is our daughter's daughter. Sioux Falls, we're both retired. I retired from Arrows 10 years ago. Jack Colbeck and I were on a chain gang together for Augie and O'Gorman, and we're just glad to see you.
Go ahead, turn that mic on. Yep.
He said it all, so I'll just I let him turn it over to him.
You'll defer your time?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
On a note, all of this electronic stuff in here, my son installed all of that. He worked for the company that puts this stuff in, so I was well aware of how it worked and how the cameras move and all that. So, all right.
Very cool. Representative Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just it's good to see you again. It's been quite a while, but we had a lot of fun doing what we did, and then I think we had a few breakfasts together as well. So thank you. Yes, we did. Thank you very much.
Representative Jorgensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question. You worked at Arrows?
Yep, come on back.
You worked at Arrows? My husband worked at Arrows. Dennis Jorgensen, I don't know if you knew him.
Was he contract or government?
He was contract.
Yeah, I was government.
All right, thank you.
There was 120 some government and 400 contractors.
Okay.
Well, I talked to you in the hallway, but I know you're very proud of Allie and all she does. She's a rock star, and we've got great interns along with Sam here, and it's really a help. Couldn't do this without them, so glad you're here. Thank you. Okay, are there any further introductions, personal privileges? Okay, thank you. So we're moving on to budget setting, and for the schedule today, we're going to do the Bureau of Human Resources Administration first. We're going to defer the Department of Transportation, and then we're going to move the Department of Tourism to the bottom of the schedule, and then do the Board of Regents, the Department of Public Safety, and the Legislature. And then at the end, we'll do tourism. So we will start with the Bureau of Human Resources and Administration. Yep.
Mr. Chair, Mitch Honan, LRC. Before you is the Bureau of Human Resources and Administration budget. There are two components here. You have the governor's recommended, and then you have the right sizing of federal, other fund, and FTE authority, as we have discussed extensively.
Okay, do we have a recommendation?
Mr. Chair, I recommend we approve the governor's recommended budget and line items H1 and I1.
And as we move through this, do we refer to Senator Voida at any point in time?
Can if you'd like. No, that would be DPS.
I had right sizing. Okay? No? All right, we'll move on to Representative Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to set the budgets for administrative services, general services, state engineer, statewide maintenance and repair, Office of Hearing Examiners, Obligation Recovery Center, Risk Management Administration, Informational, Risk Management Claims Informational, Captive Insurance Pool, Personal Management / Employee Benefits at the level detailed in the Bureau of Human Resources Administration motion sheet, which includes $15,194,657 in general funds, $500,000 in federal funds expenditure authority, $63,995,774 in other fund expenditure authority, and 237 FTEs.
We have a motion by Representative Northrup, seconded by Senator Voida. Discussion on the motion. Senator Voida.
Since you asked, the two selected, they are just a reduction in other fund, unutilized other fund authority for two different budget units.
Very good. Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Senators and Representatives, Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Auk.
Aye.
Casson. Moore.
Aye.
Billhauer. Carly.
Aye.
Voida. Jorgensen. Howard. Foster. Sharda.
Aye.
Mucky.
Aye.
Zickmund. Colbeck.
Aye.
Northrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten.
Aye.
And Derby.
Aye.
17 yeas, 1 absent.
Motion to set the budget for the department for the Bureau of Human Resources and Administration hereby passes. Okay, thank you. We are going to defer the Department of Transportation, and we've moved the Department of Tourism to the bottom of the agenda. We're now moving on to the Board of Regents.
Mr. Chair, Jocelyn Jessup, LRC staff. What you see in Board of Regents is the governor's recommended budget with the additions of a post-secondary scholarship grant adjustment and same as in human BHRA, unutilized FTE and authority right sizing.
Mr. Chair,
Recommendation.
I recommend we approve the governor's recommended budget for the Board of Regents and include line items A5, C1, D6, E1, F2, G6, H1, I1, J5, K5, M8, N3, O3, and P2.
Thank you. Representative Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to set the budgets for the Board of Regents Central Office, Research Pool, South Dakota Scholarships, University of South Dakota, University of South Dakota Law School, University of South Dakota School Mines, South Dakota State University, SDSU Extensions, Agricultural Experiment Station, South Dakota School Mines and Technology, Northern State University, NSU Center for Statewide High School E-Learning, Black Hills State University, Dakota State University, South Dakota Services for the Deaf, South Dakota School for the Blind and Visually Impaired at the levels detailed in the Board of Regents motion sheet, which includes $314,362,981 in general funds, $119,365,382 in federal funds expenditure authority, $543,557,293 in other fund expenditures authority, and 5,062.5 FTEs.
Motion by Representative Northrup, seconded by Representative Mucky. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Elk. Casson.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Billhauer. Carly.
Aye.
Boyda. Jorgensen. Howard. Foster. Sharda.
Aye.
Mucky.
Aye.
Zickmund. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lafke.
Aye.
Otten.
Aye.
Derby.
Aye.
16 yeas, 2 absent.
Okay, motion to set the budget for the Board of Regents hereby passes. Moving on to the Department of Public Safety.
Mr. Chair, Joey Konofchinsky, LRC Fiscal. Here you have primarily governor's recommended changes for the Department of Public Safety and a couple motion sheets, one of which is under emergency services and brought by the co-chair. I think I'll let him take over from there.
Senator Otten.
And I will be moving C3. Or accepting the.
Okay, this is. All right. Recommendation.
Mr. Chair, I recommend we approve the governor's recommended budget and line items C3.
We have a motion by, we're going to move to, thank you for the recommendation, Representative Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to set the budgets for Administration, Secretary of Public Safety, Highway Patrol, Emergency Services, Criminal Justice Services, 911 Coordination Board, Informational, One Call Board, Informational, at the levels detailed in the Department of Public Safety motion sheets, which includes $8,737,084 in general funds, $35,025,898 in federal funds expenditure authority, $63,456,576 in other fund expenditure authority, and 499.8 FTEs.
We have a motion by Representative Northrup, seconded by Representative Mucky. Discussion on the motion. Senator Voida.
I just want to speak publicly really briefly to line D3 that was not selected. This was not included in the motion, but I just wanted to let the public know that this is something that is important to many members on this committee and in the legislature as a whole. And I believe hopefully next year we'll have maybe more options or another path to consider for ongoing funding, but we will not be moving this at this time. And so I just want to thank the chairs for their work.
Thank you, Senator. Any further discussion on the motion? Senator Carly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I might be opposed to it just because the fund swap and the new monies for fire, I'm fully for fire, but I do think we should apply to more federal programs which haven't been applied to all of them, so I'll be against it for that reason. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none? Oh, Representative Mucky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Senator Voida for highlighting this in the ongoing budget. I think it's an important topic, and I think to add further, we're looking forward to finding a solution in the one-time budget for folks. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, Secretary, call the roll.
Senators and Representatives, Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Auk. Absent Casson. Aye. Moore.
Aye.
Billhauer.
Aye.
Carly.
No.
Boyda. Aye. Jorgensen. Aye. Howard. Foster. Absent Sharda.
Aye.
Mucky.
Aye.
Zickman. Aye. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten.
Aye.
And Derby.
Aye.
14 yeas, 2 nays, 2 absent.
Thank you. The motion to approve the budget for the Department of Public Safety hereby passes. Moving on to legislature.
Mr. Chair, Mitch Honan, LRC. For the legislature, you have the governor's recommended budget in line A1. There is a line brought by Representative Norstrup with shirts for pages, as well as 3 lines brought by Senator Otten for 3 new FTEs.
Thank you. Senator Lapke.
Mr. Chair, I recommend we approve the governor's recommended budget and line items A2, A3, A4, and A5.
Representative Norstrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to set the budgets for the Legislative Operations, Legislative Priority Fund, Auditor General at the levels detailed in the Legislative Branch motion sheet, which includes $15,963,407 in general funds, $755,066 in other fund expenditure authority, and 84.6 FTE.
Motion by Representative Norstrup, seconded by Representative Mucky. Discussion on the motion. Yes, Senator Voida.
I think it's worth publicly talking a little bit about the positions being added because, you know, sometimes the public goes, well, why do you just keep adding new positions for yourself? And the legislature is the people's arm of government, and I think it's really important that the public does hear and understand that we are just part-time people. I mean, we could all be gone next year, and we're only here for 2-year increments, and to have staff that can bring that knowledge and bring that the important parts of this job to the table for each new wave of legislators that is serving is critically important. And I'm going to support this, and I think it's a good thing for the people and for government as a whole.
Thank you. Senator Otten?
Yes, and in that same vein, what the public may not know, when we start coming into this arena of especially this time zone, and we have to amend certain things, it is the senators and representatives with LRC as you work your way through a problem and making sure that the thing is drafted properly, that they need to be aware of that we need this extra staff in order to get it right the first time.
And yes, Senator Carly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our staff is amazing. What they're doing is incredible. They're doing twice the job they possibly can do. My only concern adding 3 new FTEs is there were over 100 bills brought from agencies and the executive department this year. And I actually think that's overtaxing the staff. So I think I'm for this after we first analyze how we can fix that problem, because the legislators are bringing bills, but then 100 more bills are coming from agencies and the executive department. So I'd want to adjust that first and look at how we deal with them getting flooded with those bills before we added new staff, which I do agree we need staff for the legislature. Thank you. So I'll be opposed to that for that reason.
Representative Mucky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm grateful today that we're going to bring these forward. We are the most understaffed legislature in the country by a very significant margin. And when I think about the roles up there in particular, I think about the Assistant Code Counsel. I'm sitting across from the good senator from Rapid City, and we sit in the Rules Committee all summer and through the interim. And what most folks don't know is that if our Code Counsel is hit by the metaphorical bus, we do not have a backup at this moment in time, and our ability to actually operate as a rules committee outside of the session would be compromised. And so these are absolutely essential to our process, and I'm grateful that we'll bring those forward today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And the only comment I'd like to make is our Legislative Research Council is celebrating its 75th anniversary since the founding, and Representative Casson will be reading a commemoration on the floor, and then that'll move over to the Senate. So it's kind of a big year. Didn't want to let that go by, so thank you very much. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Senators and Representatives, Ms. Gimmons. Aye. Auk. Absent. Casson. Aye. Moore.
Aye.
Vilhauer. Aye. Carly.
No.
Boyda. Aye. Jorgensen. Aye. Howard. Aye. Foster. Absent. Sharda.
Aye.
Mucky.
Aye.
Zickmund. Aye. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten.
Aye.
And Derby.
Aye.
15 yeas, 1 nay, 2 absent.
Thank you. Motion to set the budget for the legislature hereby passes. Okay, at this time, we're going to take a recess.
Mr. Chair,
Representative Norström.
would it be appropriate for Senator Carly to explain his amendment or motion sheet?
For the tourism?
Yes.
Sure, we can do that now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so on the tourism one, so we originally, they anticipated a 5.2% sales tax. That's what they guessed. And, you know, none of this was nefarious. That's what they guessed our sales tax would be for the year. And so 3 or 4 weeks ago when we looked at this, one of the thoughts was we're going to have the updated sales tax figures come in as they do more planning, and our LRC staff did a great job doing that. That got revised to a 4.4% sales tax figure. And so the number that you saw in here that's been in here a couple weeks has been a 4.0 figure, because that's what we thought it was going to be, but it was upped to 4.4. So essentially all we're doing is we're matching what they want to spend against what the actual adopted values that LRC came up with for our growth for the year. So it just seems better. I mean, I like tourism. I'm in there too, but the idea is it's just to align it with what the figures were that were adopted for our budget as a 4.4. So it's a very slight adjustment. You can see it adjusts it from a little over 500,000 to 420,000, something like that. So 447. So that's just to adjust it in line with what the 4.4 rate was set at for the year.
I do have a question. When you refer to those rates, I think some people would get confused. That's sales tax rate. No, it's growth in the budget. What do those percents represent?
Yeah, that has to do with growth, and then that percentage comes from 1.5% of the tourism tax within that.
Okay, Representative Norstrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Clarify to me where the 4.4 came from, and that is on what budget or what dollar amount?
Yeah, that was the figure that was adopted by LRC. Can they, maybe you want to give the term? Yeah, in the revenue setting committee where they came up with that figure, and that's the number. You know, they do a bunch of negotiations, they do a bunch of guessing ahead of time, and for good reason. Tourism guessed maybe we'd be at 5.2, but then when we had our revenue setting, that's where they ended up landing right at that 4.4.
Mr. Chair, a follow-up. This is a question and a statement. I wonder if we're comparing oranges to apples, and I'll explain that. I believe 4.4 was the the percentage of increase in the entire sales tax budget. And the 5.2 is from a different dollar amount, and that's the tourism. So in other words, tourism can be growing at 5.2. At the same time, the entire state sales tax is growing at 4.4. So I don't think we've got a discrepancy there. I think we've got two different budgets, or two different accounts.
My understanding is the 1.5% that gets added onto the sales tax for tourism, that part of how they project what they're going to get is they look at the value that's revenue set. So when they say, hey, it's going to be 4.4, they actually are looking at that because then they can pull their 1.5 further calculated from that.
Mr. Chair, it's my understanding that tourism does not grow at the same rate as the total sales tax receipts grow. It's two different accounts, two different, tourism can grow faster or tourism can grow slower than the general sales throughout the state. So I would think that might be an explanation as to why the discrepancy.
They have estimates, and I think I just think it's good policy to set it against values that they're already coming up with. So if we're coming up in revenue setting that's going to be 4.4, you're right. It could be higher, could be lower, but at least we have something to peg it against, as opposed to just kind of picking a number out of the air.
A little more discussion and we'll huddle here.
Mr. Chair, question for you, Senator Carley, on this. Did the department ask for this adjustment, or is this an estimate you're providing to us?
Thanks. Yeah, this was, Mr. Chair. I saw this when they were presenting to us 3-4 weeks ago, that they had put a figure, and they stated to us in person, they said, hey, we're guessing this is what the number is. And there was some discussion that day, should we have that align with what we eventually come up with in revenue setting? And so I kind of just filed that away, and now that first it was 4.0 and now it's 4.4, so I raised it up a little bit just to match it.
Representative Norström.
Thank you. The history of the 5.2 is it came from BFM, and it came specifically as to the growth in sales tourism tax. So it's exactly what we're looking for is 5.2.
Senator Howard.
You know, we've done a lot of work this session in trying to right size and get the budget where it should be, so numbers are not baked in that are not accurate. And this is really just, I believe, an attempt to right size this at this point in time. I don't disagree that tourism may not grow at the same rate, but the reality is the original number was done with a higher projected estimate than what they are now projecting. So the senator who brought this motion is using more updated numbers. That's the bottom line, and I think we've worked so hard to right size, why wouldn't we take this opportunity to keep this right sized from the beginning?
Okay, we are going to take a 5-minute recess. Thank you. And we'll have
SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota legislature and in-depth reporting from Pierre. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. From early learners to lifelong students, SDPB inspires curiosity through trusted educational programs and resources for every stage of life. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB celebrates South Dakota's student athletes with live coverage of SDHSAA state championships, sharing the excitement of hometown heroes. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. From choir to debate to theater, SDPB shines a spotlight on South Dakota's talented students through SDHSAA All-State Fine Arts programming. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.
Welcome back to the Joint Committee on Appropriations. We are doing budget setting, and we are at the Department of Tourism, and we will continue to do that. Senator Carley, do you have a motion?
Thank you, Chair. Two motions. Move to approve line item A4 for the Department of Tourism.
Is there a second? Seconded by Senator Howard. Discussion on the motion.
Yeah, so this original projection was 5.2% that would be growing for the year. Our LRC staff and BFM staff did a great job coming up with our revenue setting for the year. They came up with 4.4%. So this is adjusting from 5.2 to 4.4 and pegging it to a figure that we can look at rather than a guessed figure. So this number on A4 puts it at 4.4% to match our greater sales tax. This is the only other department that has a sales tax, tourism. So it seems wise to match those and peg them.
Further discussion on the motion? Yes, Representative Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would resist selecting A4, and the reason, there's two reasons to resist it. One is the 4.4 is the total sales tax the state of South Dakota is projected to collect. There is a different industry called tourism that may grow faster or slower than blue jeans, and egg omelets, whatever. It's two different industries, two different projections. And our best projection says that the industry will grow, that specific industry will grow at 5.2. But if you don't have to necessarily buy that argument. I'll give you the second argument, which is absolutely nails it down as to why the higher number is better. When tourism tax passed, the promise was we in the industry pay the tax, and then it is used to promote our industry with advertising. So it's basically a dollar in, a dollar out. Well, the last thing we want to do is put that money in a savings account and fail to spend it. Once you take it from the taxpayers, the way the system is set up, we're going to take it from the taxpayers. So once we take it from them, we should do what they promised, which is spend it. And so if you choose a too low number, what happens is they will have additional revenue that they cannot spend, which breaks the original agreement that they're going to spend it to promote the industry. So, but if you choose, that's what happens if you go too low with your estimates. If you go too high, nothing bad happens. If we give them $1 billion worth of authority and they don't have $1 billion, then they can only spend what's in the checking account. That's what we want to happen. We want them to spend whatever comes in, because that's why we collected the money from the tourism industry, is to spend it on promoting the industry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I would respectfully push back on that a little bit and just remind everyone that we will be back here halfway through the fiscal year, so you can always make adjustments at that time. So there would be no, I mean, with the dollar amounts that we're talking about, there is no concern that they would bring in more than this amount and not be able to spend it halfway through the fiscal year. So, and then the other is we have worked so hard to right size or attempt to right size this budget to a small degree. And this is how that padded built-in authority gets in there in the first place. So I would say take this opportunity to be as accurate as possible. And if adjustments need to be made, we can do that in the supplemental. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, I'll ask the Secretary to call the roll on the motion to select A4.
Senators and Representatives, Ms. Gimmons,
No.
Elk,
Pass.
Casson, Moore,
No.
Billhauer, Carly,
Aye.
Boyda, Jorgensen, Howard, Foster, Sharda,
No.
Mucky,
No.
Zickmund, Colbeck,
No.
Norstrup,
No.
Lapke,
Aye.
Auk,
Aye.
Foster, Otten,
No.
and Derby.
No.
7 yeas, 11 nays.
Motion fails. Motion fails to adopt and select A4. Senator Carly.
Yep, one more motion, Chair. B3, I move to approve the line items B3 for the Department of Tourism.
Motion by Senator Carly, second by Senator Howard. Discussion on the motion.
Thank you, Chair. This falls in the same line. Many people don't know this, but there is actually art funding within tourism, which normally you wouldn't think that's in the same category, but it turns out it is. This is based on that same 1.5% tax that's collected, and again, just trying to right-size it to the 4.4 projected budget level.
Further discussion? Any further? Representative Norstrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Many of the same arguments apply. Art does fall within tourism, and I would ask the committee to reject the motion. Thank you.
Okay, the motion is to select B3. Secretary Howard.
Senators,
Secretary, call the roll.
Senators and Representatives, Ms. Gimmons,
No.
Auk,
Aye.
Casson. Moore.
No.
Billhauer. Carly.
Aye.
Boyda. Jorgensen. Howard. Foster. Sharda.
Aye.
Mucky.
No.
Zick. No. Foster's no. Okay. Zickmund.
No.
Colbeck.
No.
Norstrup.
No.
Lapke.
Aye.
Jorgensen. Otten.
Aye.
Derby.
No.
8 yeas, 10 nays.
8 yeas, 10 nays, motion fails. Okay, Representative Lapke.
Mr. Chair, I recommend we approve the governor's recommended budget for the Department of Tourism.
Representative Norstrup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move to set the budgets for tourism, arts at the level detailed in the Department of Tourism motion sheet, which includes $1,535,707 in federal fund expenditure authority, $26,239,376 in other funds expenditure authority, and 38.7 FTE.
Motion by Representative Norstrup, seconded by Representative Mucky. Discussion on the motion. Senator Otten.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was looking around the room trying to figure out who was here when the legislature passed the tourism tax. I was one of the ones on the Senate floor. There's actually two of us that said no that day, and I was one of them. And so my last vote on the Senator Carly's state-of-the-art grants, I fell back to that thought process of, I don't know how many years it's been, 10 years, 12 years, that it's more of a shot across the bow, that make sure that you're really watching your P's and Q's, because you saw the committee. I know there's a little angst over what's happening, so just watch your P's and Q's.
Thank you. Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, Secretary, call the roll.
Ms. Gimmons.
Aye.
Auk.
Aye.
Casson. Moore.
Aye.
Billhauer. Carly.
No.
Boyda. Jorgensen. Howard. Foster. Sharda.
Aye.
Mucky.
Aye.
Zickmund. Colbeck.
Aye.
Norstrup.
Aye.
Lapke.
Aye.
Otten.
Aye.
And Derby.
Aye.
16 yeas, 2 nays.
The motion to adopt the budget for the Department of Tourism hereby passes. Is there anything else for the good of the cause? That takes care of all of our budget setting today, and thank you for the robust discussion. I appreciate it, and I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Lapke.
I move we adjourn.
Seconded by Representative Colbeck. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
SDPB brings you closer to your government. With gavel-to-gavel coverage of the South Dakota legislature and in-depth reporting from Pierre. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.